Okay, we're live. Okay, you're able to tell if there are people watching on their views on this as well, right? Give me a sense. Let me know if anybody shows up. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you. I want to share with you what I'd like to talk about. Today's part. This is going to be the first part of a 4-part series. So if you can make each one is independent of itself, but the idea is to form something of an understanding of the Jewish idea of Mashiach, Messianism, what has it meant, what should it mean, and what are some of the, I'd say, political and philosophical ramifications of Messianism over the years. I have spent, one of the reasons why I like doing an adult ed series is not just because I get to, learn and teach with you guys. It's also because I get to it forces me to, personally to learn a little bit more and to prepare a little bit more than I may have known beforehand. I have had the greatest time over the past few months reading and learning just pretty much as I possibly could about different attitudes towards Messianism, and it's fascinating. And I feel like I would love just to talk about this for months and months, but we've got 4 sessions, so we're going to limit ourselves to 4 sessions, and we're going to try to get a better understanding. Hopefully, we'll have a deeper understanding of not just what some of the ideas about Mashiach, but I guess one of the things that's interesting about Mashiach is that if you understand what it is that we sort of are aiming towards or thinking about, and it sort of sets a little bit of an idea of what Judaism values as an ideal. If you understand what Yemot HaMashiach are, the days of Mashiach are, then it's not just that you understand that. It also helps sort of, I think, guide us towards what we think an ideal situation is. You can have an idea of what a utopian society should be like, but many different people can have visions of a utopian society. So in essence, that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to look at some different visions of what a Yemot HaMashiach or a utopian society should be. Some we hope to be also to look at some failed and false messiahs, most notably Shabtai Tzvi. We'll get to that in a couple weeks. But let's get started. Let's get cracking. Okay, so I've got these. I have a little bit of a source sheet here. I imagine you can follow along with me. You don't have to follow along with me, but let's get started. Today I want to talk about the. To what extent does this matter? In other words, we talk about the idea of believing in the Mashiach. We sing songs about, we want Mashiach now. At the end of davening, in some Sidurim, there are these lists of ani ma'amins, of sort of statements of belief. We have it also in Yigdal as well. We believe in the coming of the Mashiach. If you take a look at the Yigdal tefillah, I have on our sources here. I listed that the Yigdal tefillah, which I think Ashkenazim says, Mr. Darji, Sephardim don't say Yigdal, right? This is only an Ashkenazi thing. And the truth is, it's an Ashkenazi thing. Not all Ashkenazim like very much. This is actually said in shuls. It seems like it's a nice, sweet tefillah at the end of davening on Friday nights. But there are plenty of people who were opposed, to the recitation of Yigdal. So, in a nutshell, what is the Yigdal tefillah about? It's a poem that summarizes the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. Rambam has 13 principles of faith that we're going to get to in just a moment. And the Yigdal is a way of popularizing what they are. So if you take a look at, I'm going to go from the beginning. Yigdal Elohim Chai V'Yishtabach Nitzav Eit El Mitziuto. Great is the living God, and praise He exists. His existence is beyond time. That's talking about the mitzvah to believe in God. And the next few lines talk about different aspects of our understanding of what we mean when we talk about God. But what we're focusing on today is when we get towards the end. Towards the end, so at the end, line number 12 there, 12 and 13 are the ones that have to do with the sort of, we'll say, end of days. Yishlach leketz yamin mishichenu Liftot mechake ketz yeshuato. At the end of days, he will send our Messiah to redeem those who await his final salvation. And the last thing is mechaye metim ata rav l'Yoshia, right? Mechaye metim chaye, I'm thinking back to Shemon Esrei. Metim chayel b'rov chasdo baruch hadayad shem tilato. So Hashem's going to do tchiyat metim. These are the two. We also have it in Ani Mamin at the end of davening. I quoted there last number 12 and number 13. Ani, and this is also part of popular song. Ani Mamin be'emunah shlema. B'viat HaMashiach, af al pi she'yitmam kol zeh chak elo b'chol yom she'yavo. Right? So we sing this and we talk about our sort of like a statement of belief that we believe that Mashiach is going to come, and I wait for him every single day. So fine, we have this in davening. Yigdal, you have an Ani Mamin. I just want to share with you, although the Yigdal and Ani Mamin are part of davening, not everybody was all that thrilled about it. Even from the early days, not everybody was all that thrilled about it. If you take a look at source number 3, it's I point at the. If you take a look at the bottom of it, it says Nun Tet. If you take a look at Nun Tet, welcome. Here, I'm going to give a. No, it's better right. There's another. If you take a look at Nun Tet, look at what the Maharil. The Maharil was one of the great leaders of Ashkenazic Jewry in the early years, in the 14th century, beginning of the 15th century. He records a lot of Ashkenazic custom, and the Maharil says something very interesting. He was opposed to this. There were certain versions of the Yigdal, I guess, before the Yigdal came along. And look what he says. I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and again, you can follow it in Hebrew. I'll translate everything in English. There were some sort of like poems that were made in German, or maybe perhaps Yiddish, al hayichud v'al yud gimel ikarim, about belief in God and on the 13 principles of faith. Halavai shelo ya'asu. I prefer they don't do these things. I don't want anybody talking about these sort of like prayers of the Yud Gimel, of these Yud Gimel. Mitnei sharov amei ha'aratzot. Most of the masses of people, spurim shebezet talui kol mitzvot. They think this is what all the mitzvot are. Umityashin mikama mitzvot aseh v'lo taseh, and they don't do mitzvot aseh, mitzvot lo taseh. They don't perform the commandments. Al derech tzitzit v'tefillin v'talmud Torah v'chiyai gavna. In other words, there's people begin. The Maharil is already saying in his time in the early 1400s, people are saying that all you got to do is believe in these things, and you don't have to wear tzitzis, you don't have to put on tefillin, you don't have to learn Torah, you don't have to do these things. But v'svurim, let's say yidei chavatam, and they think that all you got to do, be'omrim otan charuzo be'kavana, as long as you say the ani mamins with kavana, you're in good shape. It's only mentioned like the main points of belief, but it's not loach hamitar. It doesn't talk about mitzvot. They say Rav Soloveitchik also. Rav Soloveitchik was opposed to the recitation of Yigdal as well as the Ani Mamins at the davening, because we could already say, what do you sense in the Maharil? He said this smells a little bit like what? What? Christianity. So the Maharil is already saying this sounds like and Rav Soloveitchik was similarly opposed to it on the grounds that it smells a little like Christianity, in the sense that it's like the recitation of the catechism as part of the prayer service of these are the things we believe in, and that's not something that he felt was belonged in shul. He's not saying you shouldn't believe in it. Rav Soloveitchik would be and the Maharil also would be in favor of believing these things, but didn't think that introducing it in shul was the right place. So, although Yigdal sort of popularizes the Yud Gimel Ikarim, the 13 principles of faith, which we're going to get to in just a moment, there's a little bit of hesitation around seeing the Yud Gimel Midot as Yud Gimel Ikari Emunah, as being sort of like these pithy little prayers that that the kid will get up at the end of davening and recite. It's almost giving a short shrift to something that's very deep, important, and worthy of our speculation and thinking, but not something that's a little song at the end of davening, both because it's not taken as seriously as it should be, and also that it smells a little bit like another religion that you would say bases itself more on faith than on actions. Now, I want to pause for just a moment here and survey the audience for just a second. A lot has been made. Oh, here comes some more people. Looks like some more people are walking in right now because parking was not so.
Non-existent.
We should have said we should let people be able to park on the side of the building. Couldn't.
We took the last handicap.
You got
And
Because there was a truck.
And they also didn't tell us that it was on the second floor.
Ah.
So she did what
Yeah,
I did.
Oh,
it's sitting up there.
where they used to be.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that. But welcome back. You're gonna get another copy.
Thank you, I hope it
Okay.
does.
No. We're just getting started. So, if I were to ask you, to what extent you'd say Judaism is a religion of dogma, would you say that Judaism has dogmas, that things that you must believe in order to be considered to be, believing in the Jewish faith? Say yeah or no?
Yeah.
There's got to be some. Now, would you say Judaism, faith, dogma, or if you're looking in, trying to understand Judaism, say dogma or action, which seems to be more? I'd say if I forced you to make a decision, to say one or the other, Judaism is more dogma based or more action based. Action for sure. I think we'd say that. And if you look at the Torah, we talk about mitzvot, 613 mitzvot. There are very few, if any, which are belief based. There's a bit, again, in terms of mitzvot. There's a question as to whether or not it's one of the Taryag mitzvot, one of the 613 mitzvot is to believe in God, or whether that's not one of the mitzvot, that's just a foundation. You must have that, otherwise nothing else makes sense. But certainly if we looked at the sort of the core of what makes up Judaism, Judaism is a mitzvah-based religion. It's very much based on laws. And if you had to say, is Judaism more action-based, more mitzvah-based, or more dogma-based, you'd say it's more based on actions for sure. I think that is clearly, and you smell that, you see that in that Maharil, one of the things that Christianity came along and did away with law and said that faith and belief is what is all that you need, and that the law killeth, and the spirit, but the spirit is what gives life. And so there's definitely a sense of, as soon as you start talking a lot about belief, people start getting a little bit nervous that we're moving into something that's Christian. Okay, but of course, yeah, please, Mr. Gargi.
You can say that at the beginning it was dogma, Torah shelichtav. It was dogma, and then it comes Torah shebe'al peh, and then it's the action, because without this we cannot really practice.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. The Torah shebe'al peh certainly expands and gives a tremendous amount of detail to what the actions are. But even in Torah shebichtav, it's a lot of do this, don't do this, don't do that. It's not a lot of you must believe this or believe that.
And then after, it's not dogma anymore, it's action, because that we have now
Shulchan Aruch.
Shulchan Aruch, but we have Orthodox, now we have a modern Orthodox, and then we have conservative, and then we have Reform, because they look at that differently, and they say, oh, okay, if it's like that,
100%.
let's not do this.
100%. 100%. So let me I guess I'd say is as follows. Although I would avoid using some sort of an extreme formulation, which would be that Judaism is. I would not say Judaism is a religion of action, not a religion of belief. That's not true. I mean, there are certain things that one could not say. If one were to say that I believe that Jesus was the Messiah, I think that everybody would agree that that's not an acceptable belief within Judaism. Okay? Even the most liberal of movements would say that that's not an acceptable belief within Judaism. Belief in, the question is though, how many things and what sort of things become the primary ikarim, the main points that one is, I'd say required sounds like a strong word, but what are the kinds of things that one is supposed to believe in order to be considered to be practicing what we would normally call Judaism. What I'd like to do, I'm going to skip the next source, source number 4, but I want to go into source number 5 and go to where this is where it's based on. So if you missed everything until now, you can actually start now, because now we're going to take a look at the Rambam's approach. The Mishnah that is the locus classicus, this is where everything gets started in terms of belief, is the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, which says, Kol Yisrael Yeshlam Chelek Le'olam Haba. Every Jew has a chelek in Olam Haba. Shenamar v'amech kulam tzadikim le'olam Yeshu Aretz. Netzer matay masay liper. Fine. Everyone has a chelek in Olam Haba. Quotes a pasuk from Yeshaya. Ve'elu she'ein lahem chelek le'olam haba. There are 3 people, or 3 kinds, that don't have a chelek in Olam Haba. There are 3 people that don't have the privilege of earning, life after death. Ha'omer ein tchiyat hamitim min haTorah. If you don't believe that there will be a resurrection of the dead, that's number 1. Ve'ein Torah min hashamayim, and if you don't believe that the Torah is from God, ve'apikoros, and somebody who is an apikoros, and that's not clearly defined here. It's not 100% clear what the word apikoros is referring to. But we will learn the Rambam's approach today. That's what we're going to be basing ourselves on when we talk about Mashiach. So there were really, and the Mishnah goes on a couple other possibilities, but these are the 3 main categories of people who would be excluded from Olam Haba. Now, from that, the Rambam, in his commentary to Mishnayot, commentary to Mishnayot was the first book that the Rambam wrote, the Maimonides wrote. And he wrote this, as a youngster. He wrote the Perush of Mishnayot as he was on the run. He started off, Rambam's got a great life. Starts off in Spain, things get crazy there. Ends up in Spain, goes to Morocco. Things are crazy in Morocco. Goes from Morocco, ends up in Israel for a little bit. Then goes from Israel, ends up in Egypt, and he spends most of his productive life living in Egypt. But the Perush of Mishnayot he wrote before he ended up settling in Egypt. I mean, it's remarkable. And the Perush of Mishnayot was written in Arabic, actually. I guess that was, it's almost like the Perush of Mishnayot was like the first version of like the art scroll. It was like for the masses, so that people would be able to learn Mishnayot, even if they didn't have great Hebrew. He explained the Mishnayot in Arabic. The Rambam has a major treatment of what it means to be a believing Jew in his commentary on this Mishnah. And what I did on the sheet of paper here, I summarized in a way that the Maharil probably would not want me to summarize, because it's not going in depth, but it's just basically listing each of the 13 principles of faith that the Rambam has. So if you glance at the 13 principles of faith, they get kind of like detailed. Existence of God. You have to know that Hashem exists and that there's nothing, that, I'll read what I wrote here, that exists a God who is the cause of all existence. He himself is beyond existence. Second one is the unity of God. Again, these all correspond to the Yigdal, Echad ve'ein Yachid. The third one is that you have to believe that God does not have a body. All the anthropomorphisms in the Torah are to be understood figuratively. God doesn't have a body. God doesn't actually get angry in the way that you and I can get angry. God is totally different. That's the, if you go back to the Yigdal, that's Ein lo demut haguf, Eino guf. He doesn't have any kind of body. God pre-existed everything. That corresponds in the Yigdal to kadmon l'chol davar. Next one, God is the exclusive object of worship. You can't worship anything except for Hashem. Hino adon olam v'chol notzar, yoreh gedulato malchuto. Next, then we talk about prophecy existing, shefa nevuato. Moshe was the greatest prophet. Then you have number 8, is that there's Torah min hashamayim. That's Torah temet natan l'amo Yisrael. And then we have that the Torah will never be changed. Lo yachal yifa'el v'lo yamir dato le'olamim zulato. God knows all of man's deeds. God believes, God is omniscient. There will be schar v'onesh. God will reward and punish. Gomel ish chesed kenif alo. And then the two that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks is a belief in the coming of the Mashiach, right? Yishlach l'ketz yamim mashiachenu. And number 13, the belief in Tchiyat HaMeitim. Okay, question number 1 I will ask, and I'll ask for audience participation on this. Like, who does the Rambam think he is? You have to believe in these 13 things, otherwise you're not going to Olam Haba. What are you talking about? The Mishnah said 3 things. I don't even know precisely what it means, why you would not be going to Olam Haba. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But how does the Rambam, question number 1 I'm asking, how does the Rambam get from the Mishnah stating that the following 3 people don't have a chelek in Olam Haba? They are Ha'omer ein Tchiyat HaMeitim min Torah, Torah is not min Shemayim, and an Apikoros. So, if anybody has any suggestions, I'm more than game to. What do you come up with? Yes.
I would just a question. When is the Mishnah Sanhedrin written?
Mishnah Sanhedrin is written in the, around the, but let's assume around the year 200.
Okay, and then
Maybe even a little earlier than that.
Rambam.
Rambam is it? Rambam? I gave the dates in the next one. The Rambam is 1,000 years later.
1,000 years ago.
1,000 years. The Rambam is coming around 1,000 years after the Mishnah exists. The Rambam is in the early part of the Middle Ages, in the 1100s, late 12th century, early 13th century.
So is these 13 principles, is this his definition of an apikoros?
Oh, very good. So I think you're on.
No,
Yeah, you might. No, I think you might be on something of the right track. So what you're suggesting is that what the Rambam might be doing is, what you would do in any kind of traditional halachic discourse is that the Mishnah sometimes will say one thing in a sparse terminology. The Gemara might expand that. The medieval authorities, the Rishonim, will say, well, here's what it means. I'll give you some more detail. That's kind of the way halacha works. In other words, you might have a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat that says, like, you shouldn't, you shouldn't drag a bench on Shabbos because it'll create a furrow in the ground. And then that can, in the interpretation of that, and the applications of that, and the understanding of that, can expand greatly over time. So you have intuited, what I find to be like an excellent article that I encourage people to take a look. If you like this kind of stuff, it's really great. There's an article by one of my a professor of mine from YU, Professor Shalom Karmi, who was Rabbi Karmi is a fantastic scholar, and anything he writes is absolutely brilliant and beautiful and worth reading. He wrote a very short article that was published in a volume in honor of the 800th birthday of the Rambam, and it was I'll tell you basically. I think it was 800th Yortzeit of the Rambam. I think it was. I think it was published in 2004 on the 800th Yortzeit of the Rambam. He wrote an article which is great. He basically said what you said, but I'm going to give it a little. I'm going to flesh it out just a bit more. He said people should not be all up in arms as to how the Rambam could sort of get away with adding all of these layers of belief to Judaism, which is a purely action-oriented religion. The Rambam is doing something. This is what Rabbi Karmi develops the argument, which is basically traditional Jewish interpretation of text. There were 3 categories in the Mishnah. Let's try to figure this out now together, group. There was 8. If you say there's no such thing as Tchiyat HaMeitim, if you say their Torah is not from heaven, and if you say that, and if you are an apikoros, whatever that means just now, So I sort of gave a little bit of a hint to this in the way I formatted the spacing on my list of my little thumbnail of 13 principles of faith. I gave a little bit of a hint here. This is, Rabbi Carmi mentions this. He quotes Professor Arthur Hyman, who sort of, kind of came up with this idea. How might I break the 13 principles of faith if I have to give a heading to the first 5? What would your heading be for the first 5? What are they all about? The first 5 Ikare Amun, the first 5 principles of faith.
So the Lord God.
God. If I'd say one thing, I'd say God. The first 5 is, what does it mean to say I believe in God? Because you could say you believe in God, and the Rambam is explaining to you, what does it mean to believe in God? So this is what it means to believe in God. If I believe, the Rambam would tell you that if you believe that God is a man with a long beard sitting in a chair, it's idolatry. You can't believe that. Now, I mean, you can believe it if you like, but that's not believing in what he would say is Judaism's understanding of what it means to believe in God. So you could say you believe in God. If I were to say, I want to believe in God, I believe in God. Well, what does it mean? So the basics would be to believe these things. Believe these 5 things is what the Rambam would tell you. Now, if I had to say that these 5 then are great, have a seat, great, come on in. Great, Elizabeth Musk. I told her to come in. We usually learn at this time. So I said, I've got the adult ed going on now, so Elizabeth can join us. Elizabeth, you're the best. Here, we're talking about belief in Mashiach right now. Okay? So I'm gonna have my, do me a favor, sit on that side. So I'm gonna have my back to you, and I don't want to do that. So you can sit over here. You can sit next to me. You'll be my assistant. Okay? So if we say that, if these first 5 beliefs of what it means to believe in Judaism, which of the 3 categories in that Mishnah does this would you think this might correspond to? There were 3 there. Ha'omer etchiyat hametim min Torah. If you say there's no such thing as resurrection of the dead. If you say there's no such thing as Torah from heaven, or an apikoros. So the truth is, this is the heart. What would you say?
I would say apikoros.
I think so. I'd say apikoros also. Now, I only say that because it becomes more clear by process of elimination. So let's take a look actually at 6, 7, 8, and 9. So how would you categorize 6, 7, 8, and 9? What would you say 6, 7, 8, and 9 are? If you had to give a heading to the these 4 things that the Rambam thinks we're supposed to believe in, and I'm putting this as its own little package. What would you say what's this about? Torah. First, so I agree with you. First 5 are about God. The second 4 are about Torah. In other words, you got to believe that Nevuah prophecy exists. Moshe was the greatest prophet. Torah's from heaven, and the Torah isn't changed. Torah. Okay? Fine. So therefore, I've got my first 5 is God. My second 4 are Torah. And my last 4, it's Mashiach, end of days. It's like what happens, at the end. I would call it end of days. So if I've got God, Torah, and end of days, if you think about what these 3, if I were to break up these 13 principles of faith into 3 categories, God, Torah, and end of days, so all of a sudden I say, oh, you know what, this sort of corresponds to the Mishnah. The Rambam didn't make this up, out of, on his own. This could be, as was suggested, an expansion or an understanding of what the 3 broad categories in the Mishnah mean. So if I were to say then that categories 1 through 5, as was stated, would be apikoros. So that's what it means if you're an apikoros. What is 6, 7, 8, 9 is an expansion of what category in the Mishnah? There were 3 categories in the Mishnah. One of them was if you were an apikoros, you don't go to Olam Haba. The other 2 were Ein Tchiyat HaMeitim and Ein Torah Min Hashemayim. There's no such thing as resurrection. There's no Torah from heaven. So number 6, 7, 8, 9 is no Torah from heaven. And number 10 through 13 is the Rambam's understand. It's an expansion of what Tchiyat HaMeitim, as to what it means. We talk about resurrection and end of days. Okay, so once you say that, it sounds like the Rambam is not making this up. Is not making this up out of hello, welcome. It's okay. It's not making this up out of nothing. The Rambam really is expanding this from the what's sit on that side. It's easier. So the Rambam is expanding this from this Mishnah Sanhedrin. Now, I'm going to want to ask a question as to. These are things you have to believe in. I get it, to make up Judaism. The Rambam says you don't go to Olam Haba for this. Like, well, really? And what if I'm like I do all the mitzvot, but I don't know. No one told me, or I never learned about, or maybe even I have doubts about some of the things on this list. Does Maimonides, does the Rambam think that when our days end, our days that's it? What's it? So
Why would you do the mitzvah if you don't believe in us?
oh, you make
That's rote. That's just rote.
you make it. But there are, I think
Because there's no direct correlation.
I think there are. Again, maybe you know different people than I know,
Yeah.
but I know lots of people who don't believe, but like the sense of community. I think that there was you probably remember there was a couple of years ago there was the talk of the town. What was it, like 6 maybe? I think it was 6 years ago. This talk of the town. There was that big article that Jay Lefkowitz about social orthodoxy. You remember this? There was a big article that this was like everybody's talking about this. Again, I don't want to get all into the weeds with this, but there was an article was written by. It was a wonderful article written by a professor. I think he's in Columbia. He lives on the Upper West Side. About this idea of social orthodoxy, of people who like practice of mitzvot in the sense of community, the Orthodox community, but kind of like don't really believe the stuff that don't know if they believe in necessarily in God, don't believe in some of these other things that you can only call. I think it does exist. I think I'll tell you what I think doesn't exist. I don't think you have. Most of the time, somebody who really does believe in these things usually does a lot of mitzvot. Meaning, it's unusual. I think it's common. And you correct me if you can argue. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's not just common. I know plenty of people, I should say, who do lots of mitzvot, but don't necessarily believe. I don't know lots of people who believe everything, let's say these 13 principles of faith.
And don't do it.
And don't do it. Again, people, no one's perfect. I don't mean, it's not like if you believe deeply in the 13 principles of faith, then you are going to be a perfect Jew and do all mitzvot. I don't think that's the case, but there's a very strong correlation. If you buy into what the beliefs are, that affects behavior in most cases. Again, you may not be a perfect Jew, but you're most likely going to be doing mitzvot, right? I think that's probably true. But so what I want to try to understand is why does the Rambam think you don't go to Olam Haba, you don't go to the next world if you don't believe these things? What is the relationship between that and an action? Because let's get back to what we mentioned in the beginning. It sounds a little bit like what Christianity. In other words, when Rambam is basing so much here on belief, it sounds like a little bit like Christianity as opposed to Judaism, which is much more action focused. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But let's turn the page, please, to number 7. Okay. If you look here again, this is the Rambam. This is actually a little bit more spelled out. This is less in just a one line about what the Mashiach is, but because we're going to be talking about not all of the Rambam's 13 principles of faith, but we're going to be talking about the 12th one and a bit of the 13th, because Yemot HaMashiach, the days of the Mashiach and its connection to how it plays, how it's related to resurrection of Tchiyat HaMeitim is something that we will be talking about. But let's look at the Rambam says how he explains the idea of what Mashiach is going to do. This is a bit from his introduction to this mission in Sanhedrin. 12th fundamental principle is the days of the Messiah. That is to say, to believe and to accept as true the fact that he will come, and not to say that he is late, though he tarry, wait for him. No specific time should be set for his coming. Now, you don't know when he's going to come, nor may scriptural verses be interpreted in such a way as to deduce therefrom the time of his coming. Don't try to figure out, like based on the gematria of this or this, that, the other, as to saying when you know the Mashiach is coming. Don't do that, says the Rambam. The sages said, "Blessed be the spirit of those who calculate the end." Don't try to figure out. We should believe in him and honor him and love him and pray for his coming, according to the importance captioned by each prophet, from Moshe to Malachi, from beginning to end. Right? He who has doubts about him or belittles his stature denies the Torah, which explicitly promises his coming. In the scriptural passage of Bilam, and the passage which begins, "You are standing this day all before the Lord your God." Including this fundamental principle is the conclusion that there will be no king of Israel except from David and the seed of Solomon exclusively. Whoever disputes the sovereignty of this dynasty denies God and the words of his prophets. Okay, the Rambam believes that, now it's also interesting, the Rambam believes that there is there going to be a personal Mashiach according to the Rambam? Will Rambam be a person? Sounds like it. No, it's not just. It's not. Yeah, I'm saying it's not. It's not just a. It's not like there will be a messianic era, right? There's going to be somebody who is the Mashiach.
But there is also idea of Mashiach ben Yosef.
So Mr. Gargi points out that there is an idea of Mashiach ben Yosef. Some of us may have heard of. The Rambam doesn't believe that. The Rambam does not think that there's such a thing as Mashiach ben Yosef. He doesn't mention it He doesn't mention it in his writings, as far as I understand. Certainly not Mishnah Torah and in the introduction to Perek Halakhic. I don't think he mentions it in any of the other writings in Igeret Teiman either. I'm pretty sure. But the Rambam does not believe. Rambam believes there's such a thing as Mashiach. We're going to get more the next time we meet when we talk about like what does the Rambam think is going to happen in Yemot HaMashiach. And what do others who disagree with the Rambam think is going to happen in the days of the Mashiach? That's what I'm going to talk about next time. But the Rambam basically says that you have to believe Mashiach is going to come. And he's a real guy, he's a person. Now, and if you don't believe that, you're not going to Olam Haba. Now, I need to explain one thing here. It's going to sort of like, take us in to some business for next week. Next week we're actually not on. Take a break. I'm not here next Monday. So the following Monday is what I'm going to do the next session. But why does the Rambam think you have to believe in these things in order to go to Olam Haba? Is there a logic in that? So what most people, scholars of the Rambam point out that the Rambam, this is very much linked to the Rambam's understanding of what it means to have a soul, who we are in reality. And this is based on understanding of how, this is also very much linked to the Rambam was an Aristotelian philosopher, adapted much of Aristotle's philosophy to Judaism. And the Rambam believed that we are our intellect. We have, when we are born, our intellect is in potential, and we have to activate our intellect by understanding certain things. And if we understand certain things, certain metaphysical truths, and we've come to this deep understanding of like the nature of God and the world and reality, then when we die, which we all do, although our physical bodies will be, that's the end, who we are, intellect, that's sort of, what we've acquired over our lifetime continues to exist in this sort of metaphysical world. And the Rambam's understanding of the role that belief plays is that in order to achieve Olam Haba, it's not like, it's not like the way not the way I talk to my own children, which is if you make sure your room is clean, then you're going to be able to play with your iPad after dinner. It's not like an award that you get that's for doing something that's right. Like if you believe this, therefore we're going to give you a present that's external. That's not what it is according to the Rambam. The Rambam understands Olam Haba as a very natural consequence of having perfected and developed and grown my intellect, my understanding of metaphysical truths. So if you have exercised your intellect and understand truth, then when you die, that intellect that has been activated is now going to exist forever. I saw this written in one of the books I was reading. I thought I'm not sure. You can poke some holes in this analogy. The analogy I thought was kind of interesting. He's reading this book. One of the other great books that you got to read, and like all of this stuff is there's a professor Menachem Kellner. Is at Haifa University, again, Ben Gurion University. He's a wonderful scholar. He's originally I think he was from Chicago and lives in Israel. He writes a lot about the Rambam and belief and dogma. He thinks, as a side point but worth noting, he loves the Rambam in many respects, but also doesn't like how the 13 principles of faith became as normative as it has become. He thinks that that's a source of like some divisiveness within the broader community. In other words, that we define ourselves too much by if you believe this, you're an insider. If you don't believe it, you're an outsider. And he thinks that was an unfortunate sort of like consequence of the
What's the name?
Kellner. Menachem Kellner. Kellner. I'll show you. I have one of his books that in my office. I'll show it to you right after we're done. I meant to bring it in to show people. Yeah.
If the Rambam really thinks that this is more of a metaphysical kind of existence,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have this whole stuff about resurrection of the dead?
Great
And
question.
that-
Oh,
I
you
have
had the $64,000 question.
I have to tell you,
Yeah.
that all these principles are great until you hit 12 and 13. And
So-
12 and 13 bother the heck out
Oh,
of
so
most
I'm
of us.
happy you say that. So I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. So you're like really. I feel like I placed you in the audience to sort of like set me up for the things I want to say, but I really haven't. So Professor Kellner and I'll say suggests that there you see again. And I don't know who's right on this. I'm just reporting what sort of what the scholarship is on this. He points out that you see a very sharp difference between the first. He'd say the first 5, which are talking about God, and even the next 8. You would, but I think that you're right. That if you wanted to be less sharp than what he points out in his book, again, a little bit less extreme, I think that you're right, that 12 and 13 do seem to be categorically different than the first 11. The first 11 are all about understanding God and Torah, because even 10 and 11, even though 10 and 11, which I'm saying are linked to end of days, they're about God, the nature of God to a certain extent, and how how God will interact with us at the end of days. So I think you're right in noting that 1 through 11 are much more about metaphysical truths, and 12 and 13 seem to be much less so. So I don't know what I'm going to say now. I don't think would be probably under traditional categories of I'd say, religious belief and understanding the Rambam. And I hope nobody calls me a heretic for saying this, but Kellner suggests that he thinks that 12 and 13 and even at the end are that the Rambam himself did not think that they were obligatory in order to get an Olam Haba, but he thought they were necessary to make sure that people would, let's say, behave and keep mitzvah looking towards this. It's true, but not necessarily in the same category as the first 5, which he thinks are metaphysical truths. So you're very much, I think, sensitive to the reading that I think some of the scholars point out the Rambam. I'm not sure that's what the Rambam necessarily meant, but certainly that's what a lot of scholars will point out, as you had suggested. But I do want to say now, let's take a look at the next thing, though, in number 8.
There is also,
Go ahead.
Rambam is also, we know that many places he said something, and then it's something opposite what he said before, like for korbanot.
Yes.
And then, but then he explaining why he said that and why
You're right. The Rambam is in certain parts of his writing is very clear and concise and precise. In other places, it's very discursive and trying to figure out its allusion and like contradictory and how you understand it. I think you're right noting that. Again, I take the Rambam at face value here. That he thinks these are all important, but I do recognize that it certainly feels like if the logic behind going to Olam Haba for having proper beliefs is that you understand certain truths, certainly the first 11 feel different than 12 and 13. I think that's right. Now, if you take a look, I want to say even further than that. If you take a look at source number 8, I have it that's the Gemara, and also I have the Gemara, and then I also have the translation of the Gemara. So if you take a look here, I'm going to read from the beginning. The Gemara starts on this. Read in the middle of the page. It says, "Rabbi Hillel Omer, Ein lahem Mashiach liYisrael." Literally, that means there's no Mashiach for the Jews. Shekvar achlu b'mei Chizkiyahu. And he says because they had already happened during the time of in Tanakh, the time of Chizkiyahu. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef responds to Rabbi Hillel. Again, this is in the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef responds to Hillel. Surely Mari the Rabbi Hillel. Right? He says this is God should forgive you for saying that. Because this is clearly not what's going on. Clearly the Mashiach is going to come. Now, whoa, this is a strong. This is an opinion in the Gemara. Sounds to be saying that Rabbi Hillel is saying something that there's no such thing. What is he saying? Is he saying there's no such thing as Mashiach? Well, it could be. Could be he's saying that. Well, if you take a look though, Rashi sort of I'd say tones it down just a bit. If I'm going to read the Rashi, it's on the right side of the page there, right next to where it says Hagodah Gra. Ein Mashiach Yisrael. Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimloch Ba'atzmo V'Yigalem Levado. In other words, Rashi understands Rabbi Hillel as saying something we pointed out is different than the Rambam, which is that there won't be a personal Mashiach. In other words, God's going to do it. There will be. He said Rabbi Hillel was not saying in the Gemara that there will be no messianic era. He's saying that there's not going to be somebody who we're going to, give the crown and the title of Mashiach to, but that history will unfold in a way in which God makes the Messianic era happen. So again, when Rabbi Hillel looks like he's saying something a very, I'd say you might say from the wrong way, heretical point of view, Rashi tones down the quote-unquote heresy just a bit and say that Rabbi Hillel in the Gemara was not saying that you have to have, that there's no such thing as a Messianic era, but that there's no such thing as a quote-unquote Messiah who will be, who will usher in that Messianic era. Again, I want to also point out as I'm thinking about it, we've mentioned some similarities to Christianity. I think that one of the things that makes sense to me to be hesitant here, like whenever we talk about Mashiach in dogma and belief here, we have to be sensitive to how our understanding of Christianity and the fact that Christians believe that the Messiah did arrive already, how that affects our understanding of Mashiach and how that might shape our way of understanding things. Like it's interesting. Thought just occurred to me right now that perhaps Rabbi Hillel's approach of saying that there's no such thing as Mashiach He's an Amora living in a post. This is as Christianity. This is early years of Christianity. I'm just thinking out loud again. I don't know. That as to whether or not, like, stating that we believe in a messianic era, but not in a personal Mashiach, is a way of saying, what are you talking about to the Christians? I'm not sure. I didn't see that. I'm just speculating that right now. But I want to show you something that's really interesting based on that. Now you see, you're not going to find anybody. You're going to find nowhere in the Gemara where you're going to have an Amora, one of the scholars in the Gemara, who's saying, like, I don't know if God exists. So I'm like supporting your contention previously that 12 and 13 feel a little bit different, to the extent that there actually is debate about this in the Gemara. So you take a look, turn to the next page. Okay, we got 5 minutes. I got to speed this up. Take a look at the next page. The Sefer HaIkari, Rav Yosef Albo, a very fascinating philosopher, scholar in the Middle Ages, also in Spain. He quotes the Rambam, and he thinks that the Rambam is wrong for including belief in Mashiach as one of the 13 principles of faith. He believes in such thing as Mashiach. Rabbi Yosef Alba believes that the Mashiach will come, but he doesn't think that doubts about Mashiach put you in the category of a non-believer. In other words, so the Yosef Albo actually is a very, and he quotes our Gemara. I'm going to read it for you. I think it's interesting. Number 7, he says, "V'chein biyat Mashiach." Rambam Zal, the Rambam, Mena'o echad mi'ikarei Torah Moshe. The Rambam lists this as one of the 13 principles of what it means to believe in the Torah. L'fi devarav yeh kofir bo, gam kein bichlal kofir mi'ikarei Torah Moshe hayotzi michlal adat. Somebody who denies Mashiach would also fall into the category of basically not believing in Judaism, being outside the faith. She'ein lam chelek l'olam haba. It doesn't have a place in the world to come. V'chein min ha'ohu zal, Sefer Hamada, as the Rambam also said in his Mishnah Torah, in Hilchot Tshuva, bichlal kol. But v'zeh davar matmiya ma'od. This is very shocking, says Rabbi Yosef Alba. Again, he's a scholar, a leader of the Jewish community, a philosopher, not of the Rambam's stature precisely, but he's writing this again about 200 years after the Rambam. This is very shocking. Shari Matzina b'Gemara Sanhedrin, Perek Chelek Rabbi Hillel. We found there is a scholar in the Gemara, Rabbi Hillel, Shu Echad Michachmei Yisrael, Hanis Karim b'Gemara. He's one of the rabbinic leaders mentioned in the Gemara. Omer Shein LaMashiach LiYisrael. He says there's no such thing as the Mashiach. Shekvarach Lubi Meir Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. U'Lefi Divrei Rambam Yeh Oto Chacham Miklal HaChofrim. Would the Rambam say that this Rabbi Hillel, who's in a cited in the Gemara, who's quoted in the Gemara, is somebody who has no place in the world to come? It's a pretty strong statement of one of the rabbis in the Gemara. And if that's the case, Lami's Kiro to the Gemara. Why would they mention him in the Gemara if he has no place in the world to come? If he's not Jewish, according to the Rambam, why would he mention him in the Gemara? If he's not believing in the principles of Jewish faith. Maybe you want to tell me they mentioned him in order to show that he's wrong, which the Gemara did. I mean, the Gemara did reject him. I just want to point out. The Gemara shouldn't have mentioned him as Rabbi. He's called Rabbi Hillel. This is not Hillel of Beit Hillel. It's a different Rabbi Hillel, right? He thinks that Rabbi Hillel did not believe in Mashiach. He thinks that he would not be considered to be, according to the Rabbi Yosef Albo, one of the people who denies the basic tenets of Jewish faith. The Rabbi Yosef Albo basically, interestingly, I think he does something which many of us, I would say, feels a little bit more modest, but also seems to resonate a bit more. He actually lists there are 3 Ikarei Emunah according to Rabbi Yosef Albo. If you had to sort of, and again, it's based on what the Rambam says, and he believes in everything the Rambam says. He just doesn't think that I would make each one of these things a principle that if you don't believe in it, you're outside of the faith. He says there are 3 broader categories. What are the 3 broader categories? What would you guess his 3 principles of faith? What are the 3 most basic? You got to believe in these things, otherwise it's like, nah, that's not. If you don't believe in these 3 things, it's hard to say that that's Judaism. what would you say 3 things would be? If you had to make it the top 3.
God.
God. Okay, God, you got to believe God exists.
One God.
Oh, fine, but I'll put that in God. You got to believe God exists. One God exists. That's one thing. He says that's one of his Ikari Emunah. Give me another one we say is not Torah. You have to believe that the Torah is from God. And what would you say? What was the 3rd thing that he thinks you have to believe that there's such a thing as schar and onesh, that God cares about us. Okay? That God will, reward and punish. Those are the 3 things. If you don't believe in those 3 things, he thinks you're out. Then that's it. You might believe in things you might like Judaism, but what you're espousing is not Judaism. And then you might have doubt about it, but as long as you believe in those 3 things, that's the core categories of Jewish belief. Okay, I think you like that better.
Which rabbi is this?
Rav Yosef Alba.
I like it.
You like it. Okay, I get that. So when you said what you said, I was like, okay, I should keep it for a few more minutes. Now again, I will point out in contemporary society, I think the Rambam's 13 principles of faith are very much I'd say, the popular set of what it means to be a believer. But it's important to know, Rabbi Yosef Alba is a serious dude. I mean, this is a major philosopher within Jewish tradition he believes in the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. They're true things. He believes that there's such thing as Mashiach. But he thinks that if you have doubts about that doesn't put you outside of the faith. You like that better? Okay, good. Now, I'll tell you one more thing. I want to show you one. I'm going to, because the hour is late, and actually I'm past my time, so I'm actually going to skip all the way to the end, to the last thing. Go to the last page, I'm going to skip all the way to page 10. And I want to show you, this is from a wonderful book by Professor Mark Shapiro, who wrote a book on the limits of Orthodox theology, and he goes through see Elizabeth? He goes through each of the Rambam's 13 principles of faith. It's a fascinating, it's a great book, wonderfully researched. He goes through each of the Rambam's 13 principles of faith, and he tries to show that to what extent was there debate around each of these topics, each of these 13 principles of faith over the years. He'll go through, there were Rishonim who thought that, we generally don't believe this, but there were medieval authorities who thought that it was okay to imagine God as having, not to actually believe that God is a physical being sitting somewhere, but to when you're davening, if it helps, if you imagine God in physical form when you're davening, that's okay. The Rambam thought that's idolatry. I mean, the Rambam again, we're not doing that now. We're doing belief in Mashiach now. But if we were to talk about anthropomorphism, the Rambam is a zealot in ridding Judaism of any kind of anthropomorphic tendencies. When you read the Torah, it sounds like God gets. Again, I don't just mean physical. I mean even human characteristics, anger, happiness, things that we use those terms to talk about God. But the Rambam means if you actually believe that God is angry with us in the way that I'd be angry with my child in a real way, that's idolatry. That's not what we mean when we talk. God is completely different than us. Because we have to think in human terms, it helps us understand, but understand that it's a metaphor, not something that's real.
But the Torah has human characteristics.
Yes.
Hashem.
Yad Chazakah.
He's talking.
He talks to us. Vayidaber Hashem. He spoke to us. So correct. The Rambam fought that's not this.
Kind.
Yes, he talks to us. The Rambam fought a very, I'd say, strong and fierce battle against people who, kind of understood God understood the Torah more literally as having God have certain human characteristics. The Rambam was really reinterpreted a lot of things. Again, that's not our talk. Now, if we were going to do the first 5 of the Yud Gimel Ikari Emunah, we would be focusing on that. We're doing the last 2, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. I want to tell you the last thing. This is great from the sort of the introduction to this book by Professor Shapiro. He quotes Rav Kook's understanding of this, and I want to just read a little bit. Approaching matters from a different angle. Again, Rav Avram Isaac Kook, that was the former chief rabbi of pre-state Israel, Palestine. also different from Maimonides. While as noted above, Maimonides did not leave any room for the honest doubter. Cook specifically excludes such a person from being categorized as a heretic. In a passage that deserves to be quoted at length, I'm going to read part of this, okay? Know that as far as halacha is concerned, it's absolutely forbidden and a festering sore for even one to cast a doubt concerning the truth of the content of our perfect faith. However, we do not find our sages deeming such individuals heretics. Only one who definitely denies, that is, who decides that the very opposite of our faith is true, is included in this category. A categorical denial cannot possibly be found in Israel except in one who is completely wicked and an intentional liar. For the greatest wickedness can only sow doubt in the minds of the weak. One who is brazen enough to say that he's a complete denier and is thus certainly wicked. And he cannot claim that he has no control over his thoughts. If the heresy in our generation was honest, it would be in a position of doubt. And its doubts can be easily clarified. So in other words, he believes that that doubt, not being certain, is not something that would put you outside. And I want to leave the last one. It's so nice. This is a great. I'm going to read for you the end. Yeah, sure. We're almost done. You got the last minute. You got 9 to 10, not 10 to 11.
No, it's 10 to 11, right? It's 11 to
I'm
12.
it's 10 to 11, not 11 to 12. Sorry.
10 to 11.
Oh, you catch the last minute. It's fine. So this is great. So he quotes from Rabbi Lamb, who wrote a book called Faith and Doubt, which is a fantastic book. I encourage everyone to read it. Faith and Doubt is fantastic. So he quotes in this the following story. We talked about that there's room for doubt. Once one Rabbi Noach of Lechkovitz was in his room. He heard how one of his disciples began to recite the principles of faith in the house of study next door, but stopping immediately after the words, "I believe with perfect faith." Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema, he whispered to himself, "I don't understand that." And then once more, "I don't understand that." The tzaddik left his room and went to the house of study. "What is it that you don't understand?" "I don't understand what it's all about," said the man. "I say I believe. But if I really do believe, then how can I possibly sin? But if I do not really believe, why am I telling lies?" Good. It's actually, you like the question, right? It means, answered the rabbi, that the words "I believe" are a prayer, meaning, "Oh, that I may believe." Then the chassid was suffused with glow from within. "That is right," he cried. "That is right. Oh, that I may believe. Lord of the world, oh, that I may believe." In other words, the ani ma'amins would be not purely or only or exclusively a declaration of faith, but also an aspiration. I think that the idea that Rav Kook suggests here, that there's room for honest faith and honest doubt, is something that I find I find compelling, and I find enriching, and I find it's a bit gives you a little more confidence. And so I'd say, just to wrap up for today, what I wanted to do today was to show a little bit of background that the Rambam does believe, normative Judaism believes that there is, even if Rabbi Hillel does, there is a bit of a debate as to whether or not it puts you outside of the category of believers in the Middle Ages, between Rabbi Yosef Albo and the Rambam. But belief in the days of the Mashiach certainly is something that at least the Rambam thinks we must believe in, we should believe in. And so I guess I set this as the foundation for the next 3 classes that I'm going to do is, what does that mean? If I believe the Mashiach will come, and I believe there's going to be such a thing as a Messianic era, what does that entail? What is the Messianic era supposed to look like? And that will be the topic of the next class. So thank you all for coming.
Yasher Koach.
Thank you.